Hello there, and welcome once again to my little corner of YouTube, my little arty corner on YouTube, hopefully. It's Monday the 7th of March. It's another grey day. I say this, it's the time of year, but at least it's dry, so I'm looking on the positive side. I'm okay. I hope you're okay, and I hope you're feeling well, and I hope you're ready to be a bit creative as I do a draw with me. Now, Mondays, I've said, are going to be Motif Mondays. Forget about that, because I'm just realising that by it's kind of like putting restrictions on myself. Also, I feel limited to do things or obligated to do something when I don't feel it. So I'm just going to go with the flow. And I think this is a result of yesterday's video where I did a border in my journal page, just a narrow border, a small pattern, easily repeated, just to add a bit of prettiness to a page or to break that blank page. So there's not that fear of perhaps writing on it or messing things up. Having said that, if you like the border so much, you might not want to write on it because you won't want to mess it up. It's a catch-22, isn't it? So what I thought I'd do today is I want to have a look at a pattern that is one of my favourites that I use as borders, as a filler pattern and all sorts, but then a variation I've found and see if I can come up with some other variations. So how does that sound? Okay, one of my favourite filling patterns is called Shattuck, and it comes in two variations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some small borders here, like this, because we don't need to draw the full length versions, do we? And I'm going to create a box around them, like so. I'm using an old 05 pen. So this is in my Hahnemuhle, the DNS sketchbook, which has got quite toughy paper. So it's okay to wreck these. So it's Shattuck, and when I hear it pronounced by Americans, it sounds like Shattuck. And I'm going, how'd you get to that? It's just the way it's pronounced, isn't it? It's like primer. Vehicle. We don't pronounce the H's over here in the UK. In America, it's vehicle, I hear. Vehicle. And we say vehicle. Easier to say. But yeah. So Shattuck is one of my favourite patterns, and there's two versions that I know of. Well, there's a couple actually, because I do a version myself. So it's based on a zigzag pattern in this first instance, and then you fill this space in with either solid lines, or I'm breaking my lines up with a bit of sparkle, because I like a bit of sparkle. Actually, before I turn my book, let me do this one. It'll be less dizziness inducing for you, me and everybody else who may wander around to watch this. You never know. Yeah, you can see on the other page, this sketchbook I'm using not exclusively for my pattern projects, my pattern explorations. Now then, I got to work this one out. It's a sketchbook that I decided, there we go. Yeah, it took me a while to work it out. It's an awkward size. Using a sketchbook is more awkward than using a piece of paper, but it has the advantages that I don't have loose sheets of paper wandering around until I discovered that I need to put them into a book, because I can be a bit lax about such things. But you're likely to see me flop back and forth between them. I can never settle on one thing that works best for me. So this is me. I like variation in what I do and how I do things. So I'm going to fill this section in first. Here we did these lines along here. If you do them this way, they sort of like join up with these. So we want these lines, they don't join up at all. So it's along this side of the zigzag, not the border edges. We've echoed or copied those lines there. So it's time to copy these ones. And it fills it in quite nicely. And for this one, I did this first because I want to use this angle here as a way of filling this in, because we don't have that other line at the top here. So it's imagining where that line would be. So that's one version of Shattuck. And the other version that I often draw has, instead of straight zigzag lines, they curve. Oh, didn't quite make the corner with that one. And again, we can do this in exactly the same way with these broken bits. But what I like to do as well is to put a solid border there. You could do that with a straight one, don't get me wrong, but there's just something lovely about a solid border. And then if you give me a mo, that's brill. That's an 05 pen, I've got an 03 one out. And then if you use a finer pen, the thicker lines become the defining lines, the ones that define the shapes, the patterns. And the finer line then is the filling pattern. So we can do this in exactly the same kind of way. Like this. I don't know if you notice how much of a difference, or the difference that using a finer pen makes. You can get the lines a lot closer together without them bumping into each other or feeling that they're too solid. And there is just that, it does allow the thicker lines to stand out that little bit more. And here I've got this here, so I've got this one like so. So that's another version. I'm going to draw the straight lined ones again here. I wouldn't mix and match if I was going to use these in a drawing, though it could be interesting. But I'm going to draw, there's the original line. Pop that one underneath, and I put that one on the top. It will work its way out, it'll be fine. So here I'm going to do the same with these lines. But when I get to the bottom, I'm going to fill the bottom in with, in fact I'll do that while I've got the thicker pen in my hands, with a little triangle of blackness. And we can do that on these. So if I just do a couple there, you can see and that one would be black just there. How that just adds something to the structure. It definitely helps to define these individual shapes in some way. And then of course we can just add these lines that fill the space in. When you've got a space like this though, there's variations we can do with this. So my lines are constantly going this way and they're fairly consistent in their thickness, but you could create a pattern of them. So if I take this top one, I can put a bit in the middle, leave it blank. I know there are people who like to leave a raggedy edge when you're doing a highlight. I tend not to. Oh, it varies, it depends what feel I want. If I want it to feel a bit more like metal, then I can certainly do that. So we can do something like this where it looks like we've got shiny black in between. So that makes a difference like that. But we could put this edge as the shiny black if we wanted to as well. So again, if I do that with one of these, we put that shine there. Perhaps not the best idea to do it where we've used the black, but perhaps I can Just stop it. We'll go down. Not the best plan, but it's an idea. So you could do that, but not use those black bits there as well. So that would be something that would be a bit interesting. Let me just pop one of these in, which is this pattern, and I am going to start by putting these at the bottom, and I'm going to give a little aura above them, a little border above them. Like so. And then in these versions, the lines have either echoed or followed the curve or the straight line here. What about if we have lines that radiate from the centre of this shape? Again, I'm leaving them broken because I want that little bit of a gap, that little highlight there. And here with this one I kept them fairly straight. This one I am actually starting to bend them as if this is curved up and over from this direction. And that just adds a different kind of shape to it. All variations of the same thing. There's quite a few variations in these simple columns. So let me just extend this a little bit because I think I have a couple more ideas of this. It's as I said, it's one of my favourite patterns to use to fill things in. It's quite versatile depending on how you draw it. If I was drawing this as a series of fillers, I would do my best to actually have them lining up along the edge, and that way we get these interesting shapes on either side. So if I mirror this one, just this one, you can see how we get these shapes broken up, and to me it feels a lot more natural, it feels more cohesive, it feels not disjointed. I don't quite know how to describe it, but where they don't match up, it jars me, and I like things that don't jar my senses, so I like to have them joining up. You can do them so that you do them in this kind of way, so they actually sort of, you know, repeat on and on. I like the mirrored versions. I think they feel just that little bit, I don't know, it creates that whole other rhythmical pattern behind it, whereas this isn't quite so rhythmical. It does create some interesting shapes, but not quite so. What was I going to do here? Yeah, so this is where we get on to the variation, a variation I found this morning, and no prizes for guessing where I had a quick look. It was on tanglepatterns.com, and this one is called Flurry. So this one isn't Flurry, so perhaps if I pop I'll pop the name at the top. Flurry, and this is by Suzanne McNeill, and she's a CZT. Shattuck is a Zentangle Incorporated pattern. So this one is using the structure of Shattuck with these bands, but what Suzanne does is she puts a band down the centre, like this, and then does things with that. So what she has done in her original is puts arcs behind it, like so, and you get this kind of pattern going on. Yep, I don't have to turn my sketchbook around, it seems, to do things. Just makes it easier, and it's easier to draw the lines more consistently if you do. But I will endeavour to keep things fairly neat and tidy here. So we've got this, and what I personally would do is I'd make one of these lines just a little bit darker, the one that I feel would appear to be on the bottom. So with them going this way, this would be the bottom line, going this way, this would be the bottom line. This feels higher up, and that adds that feeling of dimensionality to it. And but that then adds plenty of options. See, I'd want to pop this in, you know. You know me by now. So let's have a look at this. And I just realised I may not actually end up filling the whole page in with these variations, but I think you'll forgive me on that one. So let's pop that central border or barrier or whatever you want to call it in, bar. And I am going to thicken these. When you do this, you've got these areas, a couple of different areas here, haven't you, that you can fill in. And that's what I tend to look at, is how could I do this a bit differently? My first thought was this central bar is just ripe for doing perks in. I have really fallen in love with perks, you know that, if you've visited me often. I really do enjoy popping perks in to fill a space. It creates dimension and interest instantly. And then I think that could just do with perhaps these. And in hindsight, if I'd done these first, these are the ones that would have had the shadows and not shadow bits like this. So there's my perks in there. It's the perks of the job. And then this could be filled in either with these lines as before. So I'm going to do that on a couple of them. So you get a feeling for how that looks. And that's got a lot more weight and structure to it. It's very much more graphic. Or we could echo them this way, as I did in my version of Shattuck there. Almost sounds like shut up. So we have this, which is rather lovely, I think. And my thoughts on some of these is that I'm sure there are plenty of other ways of filling these gaps in with patterns. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. But these are kind of triangular in shape. So let's see about creating fragments from these. So triangular fragments to start with, because these could be arranged in lots of different ways. So here's one. That's the basic one from Shattuck over here. Let's do another one. I'll put that edge on it. And then we have lines going like this. That was this kind of version, but perhaps with that bottom bit coloured in black and a solid band there. So if we choose a different, with these it doesn't matter which side you put the border on, it really doesn't. So let's do this and do that, and then I can do the lines that radiate like this, which was this kind of version. I'm sticking with a straight-sided triangle here, and then we can take Suzanne McNeill's version, which is like this. Because her version, her original version actually did have the straight edge here, but I like the curve edge. I like curves. I do. So that is Suzanne McNeill's version. Then if I'm swapping pens back and forth here, I take one of my versions where I like that weight at the bottom. Let's pop that in, and then just a couple of borders on the sides, perk in the middle, and we can go this way, and then let's go and do the final version. I think mostly I haven't done this variation or this in these instances because, right, okay, and let's perk this one up, perk it up. I'm making it perkier, making me perkier this morning. And there's that version. So those are the basic, these are the fragments that we could use to create patterns from, you know, with Tripoli and so on. There's lots of options there. I'm not even going to try and get my head around that today. So if you want me to get my head around it, let me know. Otherwise, play around. Tripoli is where you have, you start with one triangle and then you build them around in a group of roughly 6, and then you choose another one and so on. But how you fill those triangles in depends whether you want to repeat these lines all the way round or whether you want to have a way that you rotate the line around. I'm not sure that would work. The same for these. I mean, these would beg for these points to be sticking into the middle. With this one, I suppose it depends. You could have these points sticking into the middle, or one of these, and just repeat it round so the lines will echo around. I think trying to rotate it too often would create that disjointed feeling. Okay, I also like other shapes, as you know, and we've got these ginkgo leaf shapes here, which are triangle shapes. And we curve these edges that curve in, and they would work as fragments as well. These could be put in a Tripoli fashion to create a repeating pattern as well. You'd have interesting shapes in between the individual fragments as well there. There we go, look, I put the perks on the outside, and that does feel like we've got lines swagging from side to side, which is quite nice. It's quite interesting. And that I would use like all of them, I could quite happily with a border around, so it feels like it's a distinct motif rather than a repeating pattern. Perhaps not this one, but you get the idea, I'm sure. So yeah, so I'm going to stick with triangles because otherwise we'll lose the basis of the Shattuck. I think the only exception I might make, possibly, no, I'm not, could we? I was thinking about popping them into a square, but no, no, not going to. I'm going to stick with those. On the other triangular-ish kind of shape, which again could be used in a triply fashion, is a teardrop shape. So again, I'm going to pop that darker bit at the bottom to point the way. Pop those in, and then if we start doing this, we get an aura knot version. Is it no, an aruka, isn't it? Arukas like that, which is quite fun actually. Let me go back to triangle, and for that version you really do need, I think, this here, so you've got enough space to do the aura of this line and then the aura of those ones and repeat it back and forth. So aruka, arukas, and this is the Flurry. Here's Shattuck. That's a Zentangle original, and the Flurry's by Suzanne McNeill. So there's quite a few there to be used. Now then, oh, give me a moment. I'm going to reach up for my brushes. I have some in here. I realised yesterday, if you saw my video yesterday, I was using some what do you call it? The tip of a pencil, of an Inktense pencil, a sepia pencil, to add shadow to the border that I drew yesterday, the Marley border. So yeah, so you know, the video, I'll try and remember to put a link to the video in the description if you haven't seen it. But I then remembered, or I said, oh, I have ink. I twice mentioned that I have Inktense blocks. I have a set of Inktense blocks, which look a lot like pastel blocks, you know, chalk pastels or whatever. And you can use them like paint blocks. So I didn't think there would be a sepia one in there, but there is. And so I just put some water in here and rubbed it on. You could do this with a pencil and it leaves some of the pigment here. I broke it actually, there's a big chunk over here. And so I just felt a bit foolish when I realised that, but it makes life a bit easier to some degree. I say to some degree. I'm not entirely sure, because it's when I'm dealing with things like this, it's keeping the same, not letting things dry out too much. So I'm going back to the sepia here because I've got it, but any shadow would do. I'm doing this because I can't use alcohol. Well, I can use alcohol markers on this paper, but not if I want to use the other side. And I'm being frugal. I want to be frugal here. So there's shadowing for the basic Shattuck. Really quick and simple. Really do like this actually. This really does make me happy. I don't know why I like sepia so much. So I'm putting shadow on the outside of these as if they're overlapping. You know, like tiles on a roof, except they'd overlap the other way round. But you get the idea. And then just on the side, as if these bars here are above them and casting some shadow. A little bit on the bottom and on the top, because it's like we're looking into a hole there. Let's do the same with these. There we go. That one may need a bit more of the colour in it. It's a bit better, a bit darker. The lovely thing about the ink tents is I can go back and darken things. You can add more colour on top and it doesn't shift what you've put down. A bit heavy-handed with the first one, but yeah, this will be fine. So it's adding the shadows that brings things to life, and I think I've found the way I like to add shadows first and foremost. I really have. I really do like this. A bit heavy-handed. I'm not very good this morning yet. I woke up with a headache. I seem to get a lot of headaches. Yes, it's true. And I know where this one came from. No, it's not drinking alcohol. I don't get hangovers in that way. But I can from other things. But just life. So I've taken some headache pills and this shall pass. So let's have a look here, because I can do that. I want to put some shadows underneath these as well to help to bring that feeling of dimension out on those. And then I need to be careful along the edges. And yeah, I've got quite a harsh edge with the shadows here today, but I'm going to live with that because headache. But it gives me an idea of what I can do later on. And the same here really, is I'm going to put shadows underneath these bits, hopefully. I've picked up enough colour that they'll show. Part of the trick of doing shadows like this is not to have too much paint, I think, on your brush, because you can end up leaving too much of the paint, because this essentially now is a paint, and it can become a little bit clumsy. Also, it's better to start lighter and work your way darker. Now here I'm putting a shadow underneath this edge here, so that it feels that all of this then is below that. And let's pop some shadows along those perks. Bit there. So there. So I didn't do that with these, but I will go back and do them now. So if I pop a shadow under here, and under here, and you can compare that perhaps with the one above, where there's no shadow. This feels flatter than this. This feels like we've got more dimension going on, and the same would be true of these. So if I choose to do perhaps just this one with the shadow, and perhaps intensify that just close to the line, and then it gives a feeling of a bit more dimension perhaps than the others, and especially if we perhaps intensify things there, that's better. Just needed a little bit extra pigment dye in there, because the ink tents are really dyes rather than pigments, I think, permanent dyes. There we go. So that just adds a bit more dimension. Again, the same can be done with these, which I've done here and over here. The choices are, I won't say endless, but we have plenty of them. Right, okay, what about these? Okay, with these perky perks, I'm going to pop the shadow on either side of them, like so. perhaps a little bit underneath there. A little bit there, a little bit there. That'll work quite nicely, I think. And they need just a little darker colour, just to bring that out. It's finding the right balance, and I'm not very good at mixing up a huge batch of colour that I can use, have a big puddle of it there. So I'm constantly doing things. This one's going to be interesting, so I want to try to wipe off as much of this off my brush as I can, because I'll want a little bit of shadow for each of these there, where they go underneath these overlapping bits. I think I'll want some shadow down here, a little bit there, and then these will need a little bit going this way, just a little bit, and on the edge, and I think we'll pop some along the bottom as well, as if they're bending away, perhaps along the outside edge, so that works nicely. Okay, and we can do the same here, perhaps shadow there and there, perhaps along the edges, and then we can add little bits of shadow underneath, like so. That gives some structure there. This one, I just think I want to add a little bit of shadow at the bottom edge, but I want to fade these others out. So I've got a barely damp brush here, which I've very cleverly wiped on my hand to achieve that. So there is a highlight in the middle, so it feels like it's domed. Here I'm going to put shadow there. We'll have some down the side like that. But I'll leave this one, or perhaps just the tiniest hint of shadow along there. So shadow there and there. That would work simply on its own, but I think that if we add the shadow along the edges, it just will help to define the shape a little bit. Perhaps just the tiniest run along that edge, not filling the whole of that space up, but just the tiniest amount. This one, shadow here, perhaps a little bit there, but more on this side underneath, and then perhaps the edge, and then just the edge there, I think. This one the same. We've got those perky perks in the middle, the perkies, the squish of them. So I'm going to pop shadow on either side of those and try to leave a highlight in the middle. Not sure that, because they're so small, it's not easy to see. So I'm drawing small today, seemingly. It's a day for small drawings, which is fine. But even with small drawings, we get a variation there. So there we are. So all my little variations today on a theme. Having a look at one of my favourite patterns, but also that variation called Flurry that I discovered this morning. And I really do hope that you enjoy this, that you've enjoyed this. Look at these with me. I'm just moving this around a bit because my camera's all skew-whiff today. Everything's skew-whiff with me. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful. I hope that you'll give these variations a try, and that if you do draw them and you do load them to your social media, please tag me in. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. If you're subscribed, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. And above all else, take time to be creative. and look after yourselves. And I'll see you again very soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye. Bye.